Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers.
And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 15, Episode 152. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com. Thanks for being back with us this Wednesday, Steelers Nation. It was an Aaron Rodgers Tuesday, Dave, as we'll see throughout the regular season. Rodgers making his first appearance on the Pat McAfee Show since signing with Pittsburgh. That took place yesterday, so lots to talk about there. A potential roster addition, some of the more 90 and 30 discussion, and our first episode of Steelers Depot Jeopardy is live for you guys to check out. Something fun we're doing to pass the offseason. Was a great first episode. Dave will be on there for the next episode, so I'm looking forward to that a whole lot, Dave.
What is Friday, Alex? Getting primed up for this for trying to make a good showing on the new Steelers Depot Jeopardy. And in the meantime, on my private life, Alex, I would appreciate if you stop making shit up. Okay.
All right. Should I stop taking photos of you on the beach, Dave? Are you frowning upon that?
Yeah. The beaches here in Las Vegas. Yeah, absolutely. No, we got a little bit to talk about today, right? With Aaron Rodgers making that appearance, and we'll go over. I think I've got about 6 more players up on the 90 and 30 series to for us to break down. So we ought to get a good hour or so out of this show.
From Steelers Depot Jeopardy to the man who once guest hosted an episode of Jeopardy, Aaron Rodgers speaking for about a 45-minute conversation with Pat McAfee and his show yesterday. The biggest news, the biggest headline, although it's certainly not a shock, but to hear confirmation or close to it, Aaron Rodgers saying he's, quote, pretty sure 2025 will be his final season in the NFL, his 21st year. He will be 42 by season's end. And so no one is exactly needing the smelling salts and fanning themselves over the idea of Aaron Rodgers retiring after 2025. But I think it's always notable, and I don't want to say jarring. I can't find the right word for it, but it certainly hits you a little bit different when you hear about a guy that plans to retire, somebody that I grew up watching, I've watched for basically my entire adult life, finally set to hang up his cleats.
Yeah, the final, it sounds like the final world tour is set here for Aaron Rodgers, and obviously not a huge shock. I'm a little bit surprised that it's a good question to ask him from a journalistic standpoint. So I'm surprised he kind of answered it, as forthright as he did.
Are you? I'm not. Like, he'll give you an honest answer. Whether you like it or not is a whole different thing, but he'll give you the honest answer.
Yeah, and he didn't at least paint himself totally in a corner and say, I'm guaranteed to retire. He obviously he says, more than likely, and that would probably be the expectation when it comes to that. I think the big kind of talk people are trying to make around this now is this good or not good that the Steelers know this at this point? And I don't envision Omar Khan and Mike Tomlin sitting around having YouTube pulled up yesterday, watching or they're on the TV watching with bated breath to see what Aaron Rodgers' response was to that. Look, they signed him to a 1-year contract. I'm pretty sure that the conversations had already been had that Aaron Rodgers more than likely was counting on this being his final season. But I guess the overarching question is this good that it's kind of out there early and 5.5, 6 weeks ahead of training camp getting underway, and that the league is on notice now, and fans are on, the NFL community as a whole now on notice that this is more than likely Aaron Rodgers' last season, and specifically, is this good for the Steelers organization overall to kind of know this and have it out there?
You're right. It is the topic dominating all the shows this morning. To me, it's moot for all the reasons you said. This is not a shock. Pittsburgh, I'm sure, went into this believing this is a one-year thing. where they're going to be looking for a quarterback in the first round next year. Will they get one? That's a whole different discussion, but that's going to be their aim and their attempt. And so this doesn't change anything. He signed a 1-year contract. The dude's 42. He took 3 months to decide on his future this year. No one really expected him to play past 2025. Now, is there some sort of crazy scenario in which Rodgers turns back the clock and the team goes on a run and Rodgers says, you know what, I do want to give it one more year? Sure, as you said, he didn't guarantee anything. And even if he did, a guy can change his mind. We've seen Brett Favre, his predecessor in Green Bay, do that 1,000 times during his career. So this does not change the calculation at all. It doesn't concern me. I don't think Rodgers will be checked out. I don't think it's going to be an issue, to be honest with you.
Is it good that that's the big takeaway out of all the 44, 3 minutes or whatever it was from the Pat McAfee interview, that the big topic of conversation is, it seems to be whether or not it's a good idea that he's put that out there at this point? Feels like it is.
Prefer that to the conversation about Danny Smith's lower back tattoo. So sure, yeah, I'll take this as the headline. But this time of year, there's not going to be a lot of drama. There's a couple things I want to talk to you about, kind of get your opinion on maybe some of the classic Aaron Rodgers, a little passive aggressive, a little needling comments here and there. But I mean, overall, it was a fine interview, and Rodgers seems to be genuinely excited to play for Pittsburgh. And he showed that pride, I thought, in that first press conference he had with the media on that Tuesday practice during minicamp. And I think that carried over into his conversation yesterday.
I guess the second point that's being brought up now is, he obviously went into the diatribe about, my private life's my private life, and when I'm gone from the game, you won't see me, and shame on the paparazzi, and stop talking about me, while he's doing an interview in the heart, the beginning of the off season here, and on McAfee. And uh, in other words, the narrative seems to be, don't talk about me, but here I am talking about you, not talking about me, not talking about me, so to speak. So, I suppose, look, he's obviously got a relationship with Pat McAfee. He doesn't do a ton of these, but interviews, but in the same breath, he's out there on, what was it, Joe Rogan, and did the Q&A at that Mike concert and all like that. Is he fair game for these guys? Even Lindsey, everybody should know who Lindsey Rhodes is, right? From the old, used to host the NFL Network and all those shows on there. She was even kind of took a shot at Aaron Rodgers this morning in the tweet. Let me see if I can.
Yeah, what did she say? I missed this.
Pull this up here, because I wanted to kind of bring this up today as well too. Here she says. And look, she's got her own podcast now and all like that. She says, uttering the phrase "try not to talk about me" while on a nationally televised show in an appearance that his employer didn't set up and probably would prefer he not make in the middle of the off season is just ... absolute perfection.
I mean, to give Rodgers some grace and in fairness, he's talking about his personal life when he made those comments about, his marriage and people trying to take photos of him and figure out who he's married to and that whole situation. And that's not why he was on the McAfee Show. It's not his intent to talk about those things, and he hasn't disclosed those things. He's been really private about that. And there was some, tabloid headline of, oh, is he really married? I don't know. I do think there is a bit of a Streisand effect when you talk about it like that, and it becomes a story and people talk about it more. So I don't know if Rodgers is really serving anything by going on that sort of a rant, but I don't care. I don't care who he's married to. Maybe I'm the only person that doesn't care about this. I have no interest in writing about it, learning about it. It's his personal life. I respect that. I really could care less. I just want to be a good quarterback, a good teammate, and if they can do those things, then everything else is kosher.
Look, he's in the limelight, like it or not. I mean, that comes with the territory of being a professional athlete. That's why people like knowing about their favorite athletes. That's why they go out and buy jerseys. That's why they want autographs. All that kind of thing. And look, I imagine it's super, it gets invasive at times, and you can't even walk on the beach without paparazzi being hidden, wherever that you are, and trying to snap photos of you and all like that. And look, if you don't want to get photographed, don't go out. It's easy to say if you don't want to get photographed, don't go out in public, but that's kind of the long and short of it. It's just kind of the things that come along with it. Of all the of the interview that he gave on Pat McAfee yesterday, I did think he spent a little bit too much time on the, you know, uh, my private life's my private life, and that kind of thing there. But I mean, it's Aaron Rodgers. It's kind of
Mhm.
the stuff that you've come to expect with it. The only question I have about this, and I've had about this the kind of the whole time here, is this going to become a Tuesday? Are we going to go from uh Tomlin Tuesday right into Rodgers Tuesday with McAfee, and look, from a fan standpoint, and just being interested in kind of hearing him talking about games and other stuff like that. I'm kind of rooting for him to be on Pat McAfee every week. But another part of me is like, man, if you're not winning, the fan base is going to say, man, well, get back and study the playbook 24 hours a day, kind of aspect of it. So I see both sides of it here, obviously. And I suppose from where he left it off last time with Pat McAfee is, he still making his decision, yada yada, and then now he's had made his decision. He's fixing to run off for 5.5 weeks, and just kind of wanted to update, one final interview before he gets to training camp. And as long as that is what it is at this point, and we're not having Aaron Rodgers show up wherever doing more interviews at this point. He runs off to the West Coast and he brings the guys out to Malibu and does all that and shies away from the public attention until training camp, and then does the interviews that he's supposed to do at training camp, and moves forward. Yeah, you know, I'm fine with everything, but I do kind of wonder what the perception to, and I guess pushback will be is if he ends up being a regular guest once again on the Pat McAfee Show.
I expect him to until being told otherwise. That's what he did last year, despite that tough Jets season. And so I expect it to be the status quo and the same for Pittsburgh this year. Mike Tomlin has always said he's not restricting guys, he's not muzzling guys, he's not telling them what they can and can't say, what platforms they can and can't go on. How many Steelers have a podcast now? Half dozen of them, it feels like. And so Rogers doesn't have one, but he's certainly a guest on McAfee every Tuesday during the season. And given that Tuesday's the Steelers off day, then I would expect that to continue.
All right. Do you
Just really
you-
quickly, it
go
was
ahead.
it was interesting, and you mentioned it, that Rogers said whenever he's done, which is after this year, he plans to go away, that you won't hear from him. And I didn't know, I never had a thought about what he would do post-career, but he says, like, he's not gonna be a visible person once his career is done.
So he's not going to host Jeopardy. He's not going to try to take your job, or that's another thing too. He shows up. He gave the whole Jeopardy thing a run and all like that. I guess you're asking, do I believe him?
Yeah, I didn't really ask. I should have asked a good question. I really didn't. I just kind of made the observation, but just your thoughts on that. And I should also mention, I think he will do an interview. He does a golf tournament each year, and I think that's early next month. He usually talks then, so he may have one more brief interview next month.
I still don't know where the question is there, but look, do I think do you think he likes people talking about him, even though he says don't talk about me?
I know he would, of course, say no to that, but there is a little bit. Yeah, I think there's a little bit there where he likes getting to complain and be able to rant to get something and have some axe to grind and some chip on his shoulder to have. I do think there's something about that he does enjoy getting to do.
Look, by telling the paparazzi to stay away is not going to get the paparazzi to stay away, right? If anything,
Sure.
it's going to cause him to to look even deeper, especially coming out saying, my wife doesn't like being in the limelight. She didn't sign up for this, and along those lines there. But I do wonder, after X amount of years in between because look, he's going to be a Hall of Famer and all like that. If indeed he will stay out of the limelight and not go on Pat McAfee and not go on these other, I guess, politically based talk shows and all like that. I do kind of wonder about that.
Same. I think the second biggest headline for the here and now that Rodgers made, you mentioned it a couple of minutes ago, that Rodgers said he's going to bring out some Steelers teammates to Malibu next week to work out. We don't know how many days that is. We don't know who's all attending. You would assume receivers, tight ends. Will the other quarterbacks join in? Will somebody else go out there? We don't know for sure, but something to keep an eye on. That workout should take place next week.
Hey, you know me, I'm a huge fan of that. It wouldn't hurt my feelings if he had those guys out there every weekend. But I know that's not possible there. I do kind of wonder, none of the Steelers tight ends showed up at the tight end university that Kittle puts on and all like that. I mean, you look at the graphic and man, there's a ton of tight ends there. And I think NFL Network or ESPN one, yeah, I think it was ESPN NFL Live had Dan Orlovsky out there and Laura Rutledge and all like that. I wonder if that's because maybe some of those guys are getting together or at least throwing somewhere. I don't know, but I found it a little bit curious that tight end university was happening this week. And didn't Pat Freiermuth show up to that last year?
I think he went maybe his first year. He didn't go last year. I don't
Okay.
think any Steelers tight ends went last year, and I think our Ross McCorkle said he's on vacation, but it would make some sense to not attend that and then go out to Malibu next week.
Right. Anyway, sign me up for as many of those sessions that they can get together with, regardless of amount of players. And I'm interested to see maybe if they are able to get some of those other quarterbacks out there like Will Howard and Mason Rudolph and uh, uh, Skylar Thompson out there and all like that, and as many wide receivers as possible, and even offensive linemen, you would imagine. So, I would imagine some photos leak out of that as well.
Right. We'll be checking Instagram stories very often next week for that. Speaking of tight ends, Aaron Rodgers, in maybe his best Russell Wilson impersonation, went down the depth chart and praised the Steelers tight ends, Pat Freiermuth, for being a well-rounded player, for his route running, his blocking. I don't know if his blocking is quite as good as Aaron Rodgers made it out to be, but gave Freiermuth plenty of credit. Talked about Darnell Washington. Again, made the comparison to Mercedes Lewis, this big hulking tight end. But Rodgers said this guy can run. This guy had a catch on the final play of minicamp down the seam, a great hands catch against cover 2. And so that's a guy that can become a receiver. Also praised Connor Hayward for his versatility and ability to do anything in the offense. And so Rodgers likes the group of tight ends Pittsburgh has.
Boy, he almost went full Russell Wilson in there, Nate. I was impressed. He was starting to name everybody off. I don't think he mentioned Ben Skronik, though.
He did mention Scotty Miller, though, which was Russell Wilson's favorite thing to do.
Yeah, look, nothing wrong with that, with given the landscape of his new teammates and what he's excited about, and obviously noted, and this wasn't the first time that he did it, talk about DK Metcalf, what a great human being he is, and how that played a large part in his decision to sign with Pittsburgh. And he kind of reiterated once again that he'd been in contact with Mike Tomlin, I guess weekly throughout this process, and had a lot of praise for Mike Tomlin and real comfortable with Mike Tomlin and Arthur Smith as well too. And throughout the condolences to Arthur Smith on the loss of his father just recently here, and mentioned the name of Tom Arth, and I thought there was nothing wrong with that. I think I believe he is genuinely excited about his new teammates and looking forward to working with them throughout the rest of the summer and getting to know them a little bit more than obviously getting into training camp. And what did he say? Not all in, what was the exact word he said? I'm drawing a blank here, but I mean,
I'm not sure.
He's ready to go. This just isn't a retirement tour, if you will. This is trying to win a Super Bowl.
Sure. I think there's a spark back for Aaron Rodgers, and coming off that tough Jets season, I think there's some excitement to join an organization with the history that Pittsburgh does, the stability. Now there's a whole lot they got to prove, and they got to get the monkey off their back and win a playoff game. And Rodgers hasn't won a playoff game in several seasons either. So there's a common goal. And, just because you're excited doesn't mean the results will be there. A lot has to go right, including this offensive line playing well. I've harped on that a million times. I'll do it a million more. And Rodgers went down the depth chart of the offensive line, the young group of Tanu and Broderick Jones. He said expecting big things from Broderick Jones and the Steelers' offensive line. So, Rodgers really praised the group and is optimistic about this group coming together and succeeding.
Yep, I thought he said all the right things about the quarterback room as well too. Says they have a good group chat already set up that they're participating in. Talked about Will Howard, talked about Mason Rudolph, even mentioned Skyler. Said made sure to say that look, I'm not going to overstep my bounds here, but if these guys, I feel that I have some things that can help these guys, especially a young guy like Will Howard coming into the league, and I'm going to be there as much, however they need me, I'm going to be that guy. So I thought the exact verbiage that he used within all that, was exactly what you want to hear out of a veteran quarterback with various degrees of kind of other quarterbacks on the roster along with him.
And he continues to prove one of the narratives about him wrong, that he'll be a bad teammate, that he won't be willing to mentor. He was excited and he wants to mentor Will Howard. He said, I think he actually said, quote, incredible achievement if he can help Will Howard progress this season. And so he's a guy that's all in on giving whatever lessons and knowledge he can, part on to Will Howard to help him grow as a quarterback, and said he's a good kid. He's looked sharp during the spring practices, has, threw a couple of great passes. And so this is a guy that I think has a lot of critiques about Aaron Rodgers, and a lot of them valid, but one narrative that I think has always been wrong about Rodgers is that he's unwilling to mentor or unwilling to help out a younger guy. I think he helped out Jordan Love in Green Bay. I think he helped out Zach Wilson in New York. I think he'll help out Will Howard in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, he said specifically, I was impressed by him, talking about Will Howard. Obviously, he worked once the rookies came out in May. I thought he really looked really sharp. He made a bunch of great throws. I think there's definitely some things I can help him with and some things that are different at the pro level. And I'd love to help Will and set him up to have a chance to be the guy for the next who knows how long. I think that's part of the opportunity. It's not the job. I've seen other veteran quarterbacks talk about it, but it's the opportunity to help Will out. That's one that I really am looking forward to. So I don't think he could have said anything better than how he stated that.
100%. And Will Howard during minicamp talked about, you're not going to overstep your boundaries, Aaron Rodgers. Please tell me everything and help me out in every which way you can. And so he's embracing the chance to be mentored, and Rodgers is embracing the mentor hat. And so you love to see those things.
Yeah. And Will Howard sounds ecstatic to be able to learn from him. I'm sure, Mason probably already knew him to some degree, and can probably still pick up a few things from him as well. And, the same with Skylar Thompson as well. So, yeah, as far as what he had to say about everything related to that, yeah, I thought he handled it perfectly.
Yeah, Thompson goes way back to their Kansas State days when they were teammates in college and other teammates in the NFL. The two comments that kind of caught my attention of a little bit of the passive aggressive, little kind of dropping a little landmine behind him was on TJ Watt. There was a little subtle comment, and I have it pulled up here. He was talking about the leadership of the team, the culture of the team. Rodgers said, quote, and once we get our Hall of Fame outside rush backer sign, you're talking about another guy who's a leader, not just by his examples, but by his words. And so giving a little hint out there that TJ Watt needs to get signed. And we think he will get signed. We're confident in that. But Rodgers, that was a very intentional comment, I thought.
Yeah, you're always going to push for your teammates to get the bag, if you will, and it's no secret it's going to happen, I think. But just probably he would like that to probably happen sooner rather than later, so that doesn't become a talking point that he has to talk. That Aaron Rodgers is asked about. Do you think they're going to get T.J. Watt signed to it? What are your thoughts on T.J. Watt, and especially if T.J. Watt has a hold in of sorts at the start of training camp? He probably doesn't want to talk about someone else's, watch someone else's pockets and have to comment on that. So yeah, we obviously wrote about it. It was notable with him kind of throwing that out there as well too, and he moved on from it quickly on top of it.
Right. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. He's pro player, wants a teammate to get signed, and we're all for that. But it just that's just kind of the stuff I think you'll get from Rodgers throughout the year, where you get those little bit of comments, just kind of very intentional, slyly, subtly making some of those. I want to say it's not a dig, but just, a pointed comment. Yeah, I think Rodgers is the king at making those comments.
And, he did talk about the leadership, especially on a defensive side of football and how it's kind of built-in leadership. And even though he's going to try to cut, what was the exact phrase that he used, the word that we had to go back and listen to a few times?
Was it the mantra of leadership?
Mantra, yeah, the mantra. It sounded like he said mantle at first, but it ended up being a mantra of leadership. And not my takeaway from what he said there is, look, I don't have to come in here and start representing this organization and be kind of the face and the leadership of it all. And to some degree, he really had to do that in New York, right?
Right, and expectations were really high on him. They were considered, by myself included, Super Bowl favorites or at least contenders in Pittsburgh. That pressure, I think, has been removed in part because Rodgers is older and coming off a poor season. But I do have some debate about that. I know guys like, Rodgers and Albert Breers made this point. He only has to come in and play football, but he also has to be a leader. This is a young offense that needs leadership. Defensively, they're great, and there's a better culture and there's more stability than he had in New York. No question about that. But he still has to be a leader. To be a quarterback in general, you have to be a leader. It's hard to be successful at the position without having those leadership traits, but especially for an offense that is young, that is craving somebody to step up and show them the way, I think that component's still going to be really important too this season.
Right, and that's kind of what he said, though.
Yeah, I guess I'm just taking some of the commentary from some of the media types, like an Albert Breer and others who have said that, his focus is only just coming in, playing football, and everything else is taken care of.
I'm trying to find that exact quote here. I know I wrote it up here.
But you're right. I mean, he talked about, yes, embracing leadership and earning it, and all those things are excellent and things you want to hear from your quarterback.
Oh, I wish I could find out where I did with that. Okay, he says, I really want the mantra of leadership on offense, and I'm going to earn it every single day in training camp. But there's some stability, I think, that I can bring having played in a similar system for a long time and having just played a ton of football. I told the guys in the first meeting, I want to pass on my knowledge. I played 20 years and I want to share those experiences with you guys, with whoever wants to learn offense, defense, team, whatever it is. About life, about football, about the mistakes I've made and how to learn from those on the field, off the field, professional, personal, business, whatever it is. I'm going to pass on everything that I've learned to these guys. So my gigantic takeaway, I guess, what I'm getting to here is he's got to feel he probably feels really comfortable that after observing, especially the mandatory minicamp, is look, they have some built-in leadership in here already. Probably, not so much on offense, obviously, and I think that's what he was getting at is I want the mantra of leadership on offense, and I'm gonna earn it every single day and all. But within that, saying, I don't have to come in here and take on the onus of, oh, this is my team and kind of set the, I hate to use a standard as a standard and all like that, but mentioned that, got leadership and OG Cam Hayward, and he just could observe that they've got a lot of veterans on that team, and he's just got to come in there and pretty much just earn the leadership on offense. So, in other words, just probably a lot different than it was in New York, I guess, is my main takeaway there. Because when who was the face of the franchise when he got to New York?
It was him,
right? And you're coming in from the outside in a big media market city, and you think we dissect, and the Pittsburgh media dissects everything that comes out of everybody's mouth. Boy, the New York media does it, on steroids there. So I guess my big takeaway there was that, he knows that there's other loud voices in that locker room that can help deflect a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, my thought is Rodgers has to come in and be a leader, but he's not the only leader in that
Right.
locker room. There are other pillars of leadership, mostly defensively, but you have that. And then I think the more important thing that the Jets didn't have that Pittsburgh does is that stability, in the front office and head coaching ranks that the Jets didn't have. You won't have the chaos of Woody Johnson and all the rumors and speculation about that and head coaches getting fired and it just being a complete mess and one story after another. That's not going to happen in Pittsburgh. So I think if anything, while I think Rodgers has to come in and be a leader for a young offense, he doesn't have to worry about management and the chaos and what's going on above me. And is my head coach on the hot seat? And what is ownership doing? Are they meddling? Those things won't be issues in Pittsburgh. And that to me is the big difference.
Yeah, but and I to some degree I get what Breer and some of these other guys are saying. No, he doesn't just have to come in here and just play football, but it's got to be a lot easier situation and just worrying yourself about being the leader of the offense and not having to uh be the spokesman per se.
Yeah, I mean, I get the overall thought that it's different in Pittsburgh than New York, but it's still recognition. This is a young offense. This is a team that hasn't won a lot recently, and so somebody has to help them. You know, somebody has to show them the way. And Rodgers, that's going to be his job offensively. It's a young offensive line. It's a pretty young backfield. It's a fairly young receiver group overall, and so Rodgers is that old head that has the stories and the resume that guys can absorb and listen to, and so that's going to be part of his job, and he's embracing it.
Is this the best possible landing spot for Aaron Rodgers for the one last hurrah?
I think had the Minnesota opportunity been available, that would have been best for him. That's just frankly a stronger roster, a great head coach, and a great quarterback mind in Kevin O'Connell, and those two guys have a really good, long-standing relationship. And so I believe the reporting that had that been an opportunity and a possibility, Rodgers would have signed there over Pittsburgh. But I think Pittsburgh was second best.
Yeah, but if he would have went to Minnesota, wouldn't he have been in a spot kind of similar to New York where he is the face of the franchise over there? And and I mean, can you name any leaders over there in Minnesota?
I mean, no, I get your point. I think he's still partly the face of the franchise in Pittsburgh right now. I mean, if you
Well, on
ask
offense,
yeah. Well, if you ask 10 fans of some random NFL team, name a Pittsburgh Steeler, 9 of them are going to say Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he's Aaron Rodgers. That's inescapable. I don't think there was a big leadership issue over there in Minnesota. I don't know the situation as in depth as I do Pittsburgh, but it's a team that was super close to the Super Bowl. Well, it's not super close, but was really strong regular season and then kind of collapsed towards the end. But yeah, I think the leadership mantle would have been the same in Minnesota as it would have been in Pittsburgh.
And then also, if he goes to Minnesota, he gets all the Favre comparisons about the trek that he took in his later years as well, too, right?
Sure, I'm less focused on what the media would have said about it, but looking at what would have been the best situation for Rodgers to succeed and have a good season at age 41/age 42. I think Minnesota would have given the best chance, given the coaching staff, given the roster.
Would there be more pressure on him to win in Minnesota or in Pittsburgh, based on
Probably
everything being outside of that all being equal and all the chips fall the way they have done with both organizations this off season?
Minnesota, because there were higher expectations on the Vikings to win overall than I would say Pittsburgh right now. And you're back in the NFC North, you're facing the Packers, there's
Right.
all those storylines too. So yeah, there would have been more pressure, but that's not going to bother Aaron Rodgers. He's not a
Right.
guy that's running away from pressure. So again, that's all media created type stuff, which is fine. But in terms of just what's the best situation for Rodgers, I still think Minnesota, but I think Pittsburgh is a great quote unquote consolation prize, so to speak.
I think Pittsburgh is the better of the two, quite honestly, because everybody's really still doubting the team and all like that, and uh, there's less expectation, I think, globally.
Fair, fair. One thing I was thinking about too, and Rogers had made the comment about kind of being familiar already with the Arthur Smith offense, despite those two guys never crossing paths, literally until now. I had gone back into my article I wrote on Arthur Smith, the big book of Arthur Smith, right after he got hired as offensive coordinator before the 2024 season. And I know they only were together, I think just 1 year in Tennessee. I forget the exact timeline, but Arthur Smith and Matt LaFleur were pretty close to the point where Matt LaFleur, whenever he got hired by Green Bay to be the head coach, wanted to bring Arthur Smith with him to Green Bay. That didn't happen. Smith got promoted from tight ends coach to offensive coordinator to replace LaFleur there, but those two guys are pretty tight. Arthur Smith was the guy that was doing red zone studies and would present them to Matt LaFleur whenever he was OC in Tennessee. And, those guys have a pretty close working relationship. And so you saw, obviously, Rodgers play in the LaFleur offense and have a lot of success there. And so I can certainly see the commonality between Smith's system and LaFleur's system that can help accelerate this learning curve as Aaron Rodgers gets comfortable in this offense.
Right. After they figure out what they want the verbiage to be and, some things that Aaron Rodgers really likes more than other things. And, obviously get these guys together out there prior to training camp getting underway. The marriage should come together fairly quick, I would think.
Right. And there's no guarantee it is going to work. And, everything sounds good right now in June, and the true measure and the true tests will come when the season gets tight and you're facing adversity, and how everyone handles that. That's still going to be the ultimate key. But, I think there's a good enough foundation for two guys that are coming in sight unseen. I think that this thing can work, and, I'm optimistic about it.
Boy, week one, right out of shoot, you play your former team in the Jets, and then you obviously you got the Justin Fields versus his former team, and all the he said and she said that will take place between, I guess Rodgers or Jets and Rodgers or whatnot, filter out the rest of the offseason. No better way than to open up week one against the Jets when you look back at everything right now. And obviously that probably wasn't an accident.
Right. Certainly intentional. Now, had the NFL schedule makers known for sure that Rodgers had been in Pittsburgh and had signed before that, this is probably a primetime game, but it is not a coincidence to me. This is the week one opener. And is it the most intriguing week one game in the NFL this season? I'd have to look at the whole list, but it's got to be right up there.
Yeah, I think so. Let me pull up the schedule. What else did Aaron Rodgers have to say during McAfee that caught your eye?
Maybe I'm putting my tinfoil hat on a little bit, and this is just an example of some of the comments that felt maybe I'm in the wrong here, and you can set me straight, Dave. Aaron Rodgers talked about that he didn't get team reps during mandatory minicamp. He did a lot of watching. He said it was in a weird way, his words, the best thing for him was to sit and watch and observe. But he did mention multiple times, I wasn't getting team reps. He mentioned that in his first press conference with the media on that Tuesday minicamp. I wasn't working in team. Tomlin said, don't worry about it. Kind of felt like, why do you keep saying that you're not working in team? Do you kind of want to work in team and get some of those reps? So I don't know. That kind of struck me was a little strange, although I understand Rodgers talked about it as in he saw the benefit in sitting back and watching and observing.
Yeah, I don't think I picked up on that to the same degree that you did, as many times maybe as he mentioned that. But I think Tomlin came out and said, "Look, these are important times for the younger guys on the roster, but you do have a new quarterback coming in, and you do have to wonder, had he been maybe at some OTAs and all like that, which was Rodgers." I guess looking back at it, his own choice, but you coming in there and, I would imagine he probably had a good sense of the playbook ahead of that. I don't know, but I guess I'm trying to say is I think you might be reading a little bit too much into it.
Probably, and I know training camp, when they run the first team period, Rodgers is going to be a quarterback, so it's not really an issue. It's just something I picked up on is maybe Rodgers making a point that maybe he wanted to get a couple team reps, or at least making it clear that he didn't get any team reps, and he got individual work, but he wasn't working in the 11-on-11 periods. But it's not going to matter it's not going to matter today, but it's not going to matter certainly once training camp starts. I get that.
And it did give him an opportunity just to see how the Steelers do things,
Right.
And instead of going in there and thinking that you're going to do things the way maybe you've always done it, the Steelers have Tomlin's been there long enough now. They probably have a certain protocol that they go through. So it was probably good for him to kind of watch a lot of that.
Right, and he made that point very clear. He saw the benefit in getting to sit back. He's probably just not used to not working in team and whenever he's practicing, and to kind of sit back and give deference to somebody else. But and also to Tomlin's credit, I don't know if this was done with that in mind, but kind of not a power play, but Tomlin saying like, hey, you just got here. You're not going to step in right away off the plane and come in and take over. Of course, he's the starter. Of course, he's clear quarterback one. But for now, we're going to let the other guys work, and you're just going to kind of slowly assimilate yourself in as anyone new coming into the building would.
All right. What else did Rodgers say?
Well, real quick, week one, what is the marquee matchup? There are some good ones, of course, the season opener, Cowboys and Eagles. You have the Monday night game, Vikings, Bears, the Sunday night game, Ravens, Bills. But I think Steelers, Jets. I mean, it's not going to be two Titans and two Super Bowl contenders, but just from a storyline intrigue standpoint, I think it's right up there.
Yeah, I think from from the storyline, Fields versus Rodgers, Rodgers versus Jets. Yeah, I think, because there are a lot of great matchups. Lions, Packers, week one. Ravens, Bills, week one on Sunday night. You got another AFC or NFC North battle, Vikings, Bears, and who else is Giants, Commanders. Yeah, I mean, as far as storylines go, had they, like you said, had they known for sure that this was going to be the Aaron Rodgers was going to be with the Steelers, by the time they said all this, I would imagine that's the Monday night game instead of Vikings Bears.
Right, but we are grateful for the 1 o'clock
Mm-hmm.
game. So in some way, we thank Aaron Rodgers for taking his sweet time. Anything else from Aaron Rodgers? That was, I think, the bulk of it overall. We talked about DK Metcalf being a big reason why he joined Pittsburgh and reiterated some of the workouts that they did earlier this offseason and how those things came together, and praised Metcalf for his leadership. More of a quiet leadership by action and by doing, but talked about his work ethic and I think chasing down a turnover and kind of showing that if DK Metcalf's going to do that in a spring practice, then everyone else has to buy in and do the same.
Yeah. My gigantic takeaway here is I thought it was a fine interview. I enjoyed it. I could have done a little bit, like I said at the top there, without, getting into the whole paparazzi thing and private life thing. But I guess I understand why he did that. But, I came away entertained, and I thought he did a good job during that interview.
It was a classic Aaron Rodgers interview in the best ways and in maybe some of the uncomfortable, quote unquote, worst ways, where he gives you an honest answer. He gives some insightful and thoughtful responses. I think he showed a spark and some pride in Pittsburgh, and, the mentorship with Will Howard is really encouraging and exciting to hear about. I think some fans that were concerned about that dynamic are going to be a little more calm and happy about it. But you also got some of the rants, the private life, made a comment about the Jeffrey Epstein files, like it is the true Aaron Rodgers experience.
I will leave you with this. He said, you're not going to, this is it before I go away for 5.5 or whatever, 6 weeks now. Just go away, go do your thing now. I don't want to have to turn on any other talk shows or cover any other, appearances or anything like that.
Yeah, and you're not going to get much of that. Like I said, he does that. I forget the name of that golf tournament, the American Century Classic or Championship. He's done that every single year, and there's usually a short little segment, but it's a softball interview, so It'll be a 5-minute thing. Are you excited to be here? Yeah, I'm super excited. We'll talk about it. We'll write about it, but that should be it until training camp.
All right.
Some Steelers roster news that may happen, at least reportedly will take place here. Pittsburgh, they have an open roster spot after releasing running back Jonathan Ward last week, and that could be added and expected to be added by a long snapper, Tucker Addington. So adding Addington is the report from Aaron Wilson. It has not been made official by the team yet, but Wilson said that move is expected to happen. Addington, a veteran long snapper, appeared in a handful of NFL games, undrafted free agent in 2020, has played for a host of teams in the USFL, whenever that existed a couple years back, and formerly of I think it was with Houston earlier this year, and it just gotten released. And so there could be a second long snapper in training camp, Dave.
Yeah, and you want to keep your options open. You never know when injury might strike. You want to at least probably have the Rolodex ready to go. At its core, do I think Christian Kuntz is at risk of losing his job? No, but stranger things have happened before in the past. it just gives you another guy to work with during training camp, and the moment that they get pinched for maybe a roster spot, he could be back out the door. Like you said, it's not even official yet that he signed, but we would expect that to happen probably any time now, and at least you get a guy that snapped some in the NFL.
Right, right. So there you go on that. We'll let you know when that becomes official. Because I thought during rookie minicamp, Pittsburgh was going to sign a snapper out of that because they brought in a couple guys. They had, I think, 2 rookies. They had a veteran in there, and Addington was not part of rookie minicamp. I think he was on Houston at that point. But Pittsburgh has been kind of showing some interest in wanting to sign a long snapper, and now finally appears to found one in Tucker Addington. So we'll let you know when that becomes confirmed.
Yeah, I imagine that'll be a minimum salary contract too, so nothing to really report there.
Just a minor story really at this point, but important to those that it affects. And I'm a little shaky on some of the details, Dave. Maybe you can fill me in, but there was a local football camp, or there is a local football camp that was supposed to be hosted by George Pickens. This was planned, months ago. He gets traded to Dallas, and so there was a question, would he still host it? Apparently, he or his team said he would still honor that commitment and would still host that camp, which is upcoming, and then apparently backed out last second. They had to scramble to find a replacement. Pat Frymuth and maybe some other Steelers players are filling in to make sure the camp is still hosted by, a Steeler and NFL player. So that comment in that story is certainly making the Twitter rounds today.
Boy, the company that puts that on sure spoke from the heart within that, and said that after George Pickens was traded, they obviously reached out to him and wanted to make sure everything was still good. And Pickens said, yeah. And then last minute backed out, and uh, look, I don't know obviously don't know all the behind the scenes thing, and supposedly this announcement was released to, I guess, via email to the people that had subscribed or had paid or going to have kids attending this thing. At its core, it's not a great look for George Pickens, I'll tell you that. And it's a good look for Pat Frymuth and whoever else from the Steelers shows up. And just to clarified, this is not a team sponsored camp. This is, an outside organization that puts this on. And, I suppose, that there's a little bit of money to be made within that. I don't know for sure. I don't know how those things work in the overall, but this is not a team, sponsored, camp per se. But it did, I don't know, however you slice it right now, it's not a great look for George Pickens.
Right, it isn't. Now we don't know why.
It looks like they gave him a chance to back out, after the trade and all like that. He said, no, I'm still coming. And then last minute, says, no, I'm not coming.
And it would have been understandable to say, listen, I got traded. I'm not going to be around. I'm sorry, guys. I didn't expect this. So had he said that right after he got dealt and then backed out, that I think would have been fine. We don't know what happened. Maybe something, an emergency happened, but George Pickens' reputation wasn't great already in Pittsburgh, and it just got a little bit worse.
Yeah.
All right, Dave, let's move on. Let me ask you, we're going to talk about the 90 and 30 here in a second. I want to get your take on this. And again, I haven't, with Rodgers yesterday, I didn't get a chance to really dig into this story. You may not have been able to either, but Pablo Torre, and Mike Florio, they had uncovered some apparent collusion or attempted collusion by the NFL. This, I think, relates back to veteran contracts where the NFL council and Roger Goodell were basically giving teams permission to not give veterans as much guaranteed money. There's some discussion about, how much proof of that is there, but an arbitrator basically found there's at least strong evidence of that. So did you get a chance to really look into this story, and what are your thoughts on it, if so?
I know enough about it where where it's too dangerous probably to talk about it right now. I would like to see that full article breakdown on, was it Substack, I guess, and read that. Mike Florio loves these kind of things, and he's been all over this, but I want more than Mike Florio's side. I have not completely read the supposed document yet, but at its core, it sounds like the way it's being presented, like there's, a little bit of a collusion aspect to it. And if indeed this is the case, and I think Mike Florio was was right to kind of point out, will we see NFL.com, ESPN, all the, the networks with the television, the ones that have probably, I guess, more to lose, I guess, than when making this a more of a national story. Will we see it presented and both sides presented from that? How will the NFLPA respond to it? Will the NFL respond to it? So the old thing where there's smoke, there's fire. It definitely seems to be the case in this instance, and I don't think either side, the NFL or the NFLPA, is going to come out looking great if indeed this is kind of indeed factual the way it's kind of laid out within this. It's not a great look, and it's even more of a going to be more of a thing that the NFLPA should be going towards guaranteed contracts across the board. And how much would this have played into the Lamar Jackson thing specifically?
Mm-hmm.
I think at its core, Lamar Jackson obviously would have, wanted to stay right where he was at in Baltimore. But within that, he probably would have liked to have a fully guaranteed deal. So this is going to be a talk. It's probably not a mistake that Pablo released this right at the start of the dead of the offseason here, because it should be a talking point moving forward here. I would like to learn more about it. I have not dove deep enough into this once again, but you've got people like Andrew Brandt chiming in on this. It's going to be interesting to see where this goes. Did the league indeed, coming out of the Deshaun Watson contract and all like that, did they all get together and say, look, we need to stay away from these guaranteed contracts for the most expensive position in football, most important position, because of having to escrow this money, and it puts a bigger crunch on us organizations, and has a chance to even separate the big market from the small market. Kind of, instant. Do I believe a lot of this is true? Yeah, I do. For all the things that I just said there, but it's not going to be a good look as more and more of this comes to light.
Sure, sure. And the question is, how much does come to light? How much is this picked up on by the companies that might have a conflict of interest, so to speak, in ESPN and certainly NFL.com? I haven't seen a whole lot of that being written about, but I haven't taken the time to really investigate that. And it was Pablo Torre, when I get the name right. He does some interesting and good investigative journalism, and this is really interesting details about a lot. I think he's uncovered about that collusion report from that arbitrator, to comments from J.C. Treader about Russell Wilson, and just there's a whole lot going on there. And so we'll talk about that maybe more for Friday's show if we can learn a little bit more. But that I thought was interesting. And yeah, we'll see how much light it truly gets from the national media.
Look, if you have fully guaranteed contracts, you've got to essentially guarantee that money, right? You got to, you have the escrow that a lot of people don't talk about, aspect of it, where you show that you're good for that, essentially that you're good for that money and all. And it does put a bigger strain on, I guess, so to speak, smaller market teams, overall. So I do think that the players should make a bigger push. And I say this every time the CBA comes up, that they should make a bigger push for guaranteed contracts. But when push comes to shove, they don't do a good enough job. You always have the haves and the have-nots, and the have-nots is a bigger pool than those mega contract guys, and they're telling those younger guys, you guys need to hold out for your future rights. And it's easy to say that when they've got the $38 million in the bank, and these other guys are playing for $900,000 non-guaranteed money and are year to year, right? So
Right.
it is going to put even more of a strain on talks moving forward the closer we get to this new CBA of the guaranteed contracts, and should the quarterbacks have their own separate salary cap, and then you're going to get into, I guess, some sort of discrimination aspect and lawsuits. It's going to end up being a bigger mess than what it is out there right now. And I would expect this to gain more and more traction over the next 5 weeks as teams report to training camp.
Yeah, my takeaways overall off the top, Dave, is that the NFLPA could and should make a stronger push for fully guaranteed contracts, knowing the NFL is trying to do their best to do everything they can to avoid that, and that's incentive enough to have the NFLPA push for it. And is this going to strain relationship between the union and the NFL and the owners going forward, not only for the CBA in 2030, but the NFL is going to want to have a conversation about an 18 game schedule probably as soon as next season, and they're going to have to give up something to get an 18th game. And how do those conversations go? Does that get messy, or does that become a more strained discussion? We'll have to see about that.
Yeah, I think we're going to get to the point too, because of owners wanting more money to help cover things like that. We're going to see it's going to be these player uniforms are going to look like NASCARs with all these decals and patches on them and all like that, because they're going to continue to help offset that extra cost somehow by outside advertisers, right? And look, advertising drives the world, if you will. But make no mistake about it, the NFL is a machine, man. I mean, is there when it comes to professional sports, and I haven't taken a look at globally soccer and all like that, but when it comes to the major professional sports, is there any bigger machine than the NFL?
Doesn't seem like it. The NFL is king, and they try to use their power when they can, and that seems to be the conclusion of this report from that arbitrator.
All right.
All right, Dave, let's go back to Pittsburgh and your 90 and 30 series, the 6 names to talk about today. Let's pick up where we left off with Sebastian Castro, the undrafted rookie free agent safety out of Iowa. Good college career, thought he was a draftable player, a little undersized, didn't test well. That combination of small and slow usually gets you in that undrafted pool, but I think a quality pickup by Pittsburgh, who may make some noise this summer.
Yeah, he's one of the guys coming out of, I think it was the Senior Bowl that really turned me on to him and talked about him potentially being a Steeler. I kind of thought he had shown enough and did enough during his college career in the All-Star week and everything leading up to it to get drafted. He obviously went undrafted. Really seemed like a Steeler player to me in the limited film work and study that I did on him prior to the draft. You look back at what he did at Iowa and how he was used, very position flexible guy. I think in his over 2,000 snaps played in college, he logged nearly 1,600 of them as kind of a slot cornerback, if you will. 322 others had him at strong safety, 67 others at free safety. Also logged, I think, 23 college snaps as an outside cornerback. College career, 163 total tackles, 4 interceptions, 18 pass breakups, 5 forced fumbles. Just my main takeaway with him coming out of college, very physical player, very position flexible player. I was very careful when labeling his position, just kind of coming out of what we, I think, learned. What was the report on him coming out of the OTAs and the mandatory minicamp? Kind of moved around, saw some slot time.
I think he had told one beat guy he didn't get any slot reps, so I don't really know how he was used. If it was just in a safety role, I don't know if that plan is to change once he gets his legs under him and they feel more comfortable moving him around. So certainly something I'll keep an eye on. But there's a skill set to do more and wear more than just one hat.
Yeah, and in my outlook on him, I said position usage during training camp will be interesting to track, and especially because he is slot capable. Uh, you know, I think he probably best translates into the NFL as more of a strong safety type because of that physicality, because of that lack of elite athletic traits, if you will, RAS and things of that nature. Uh Look, this guy's going to have to impress on special teams. If he can't excel on special teams, it's going to be hard to carve out a path for him, I think, on the 53-man roster. He does feel that kind of chess piece kind of player, if you will, kind of a jack of several trades, master maybe of none of them. It will be interesting to track to see, slot. Look, he's not going to be in the running to be the starting slot by any stretch of the imagination. But could he be kind of a dime type guy? And how is he going to be third team strong safety, just an intriguing guy overall. I think my initial thoughts on him right now is he going to make the 53-man roster? Probably not. But if he can, show some of that versatility and position flexibility and show up during the preseason and especially on special teams, is there an outside chance? Have stranger things happen where a guy like him makes the roster?
I mean, it certainly could happen. It wouldn't shock me at all if he did. I do see potential dime roles for him. Not to start, obviously. Corey Trey should be the starting dime guy, but second team dime, third team dime work in the preseason and training camp. I can certainly see that. That seems to be the best role for him. Just a guy that made a lot of plays. Just one of those classic Iowa guys that isn't the biggest or the fastest, but a really productive college career. Think about Jay Higgins at linebacker at Iowa. He did the same. And so Pittsburgh loves their Iowa guys. He knows the system. The defenses are pretty similar. That's going to help him lessen that learning curve. If I'm Sebastian Castro, Dave, here's what I do. I become a sponge to Miles Killebrew. I look at Miles Killebrew and say that is Castro's path to sticking. Special teams, hair on fire kind of a guy. Castro's smaller than Killebrew, I'm pretty sure, but Killebrew, a little kind of a tweener. What is he? Is he a linebacker? Is he a safety when he came out of Southern Utah? Not the fastest guy in the world. Cut his teeth on special teams, big run and hit, energy bringer. That's got to be what Sebastian Castro brings to Pittsburgh himself.
And look, I mean, you look at the safety depth chart as a whole right now. I mean, you obviously got Mika Fitzpatrick, Deshaun Elliott. You got a newcomer in there also in
Juan Thornhill.
Yeah, Juan Thornhill, who's kind of position flexible. And then after that, though, you mentioned Miles Killebrew and all, but I mean, is that really a guy? He's obviously more special teams than anything else. I mean, who's in the list of safeties after that?
Yeah, you have four, which I think are pretty much locked in. The four you mentioned, Killebrew included. Could they add a fifth? Certainly. And then it's Castro. It's Quindell Johnson, who they picked up a couple weeks ago, who's got some experience over in Chicago. But it is wide open after that fourth spot, be it that fifth safety on the 53 or the top practice squad spots. It's wide open.
I think you hit on it really well there. You go to a guy like Miles Killebrew and you pick his brain of everything he's done to carve out a career in the NFL.
Exactly.
Look, for him to make this 53, he's going to have to be a core special teams guy, I think.
Right. But
I think he'd excel in that area because he is a physical type player. Once again, one of the main things that stuck out to me, especially after Senior Bowl week, is this is a guy that's not afraid to stick his face in the fan, so to speak.
100%. I think we're going to talk about Sebastian Castro one day after a training camp practice, you and I, Dave, or after a game, and say, man, Castro had this big hit or made this big tackle on the kick coverage team, and watch out for this guy. Does that guarantee he makes the 53? No. But I think at some point, for some period of time, at the very least, we're talking about Sebastian Castro being a hair on fire, classic Steelers special teamer.
I'm gonna more than once. I'm gonna be saying, where was Sebastian Castro on defense? Did he get any slot snaps? Is he primary, strong safety? Mix in any dime. So he is going to be a guy. Quite honestly, he's one of the most intriguing undrafted free agents that this team has this year.
Right, and part of a promising pool. They typically don't have a lot of intriguing UDFAs, but this year they have a lot of them. Castro may be at the top.
All right.
Let's go to Dylan Cook. We talked about him a fair amount. We talked about Calvin Anderson last episode, but really big summer for Dylan Cook, a guy that made a lot of noise his first year with the team 2 years ago, was on the 53 all year. It looked like he could really become something. Last year was a step back. His camp was just okay, had a foot injury, never played it down, and was barely on the 53 for, I think, all of a day when they activated off of injured reserve, and he finished the year on the practice squad. So tackle depth this week. It's Anderson. Can Cook carve out a role? This has to be the year that Cook really puts it together.
Yeah, I'll give you a couple opening sentences here. First on the player and then on the outlook that I wrote up on him. On the player, I said at this time a year ago, it looked as though Cook might have the best shot at being the Steelers' top swing tackle for the 2024 regular season. However, after Cook ran second team left tackle, and I think he got a little bit of right tackle work as well, too, throughout most of training camp and the start of preseason, a foot injury landed him on reserve injured list as a designated return player to start the regular season. And then in the outlook here, I said Cook's future in Pittsburgh isn't as bright for him this summer as it was a year ago, even with the Steelers' depth at the tackle position not being ideal right now. And in fact, when we talked about Calvin Anderson in our first set of 9 players here, it appears as though right now that Cook, more than likely is behind even Calvin Anderson at this point, way ahead of training camp getting underway. And here's, one kind of really discouraging fact for a guy this will be his third training camp, right? The fact is that he's yet to log an NFL snap right now to this point.
Right. And so typically you don't get to hang around for 4 or 5 years, not have an NFL snap and think you're going to stick. So the talent was there. I was super excited about Cook, former college quarterback, transitioning to the offensive line, pretty new to the job overall, but you can only, make that story last for so long before you got to produce. He's a guy that's athletic. I thought had good hand use. I don't know what happened last year. It just didn't feel like there was that jump in his game, but this year has to be the year for Dylan Cook.
Well, yeah, I mean, he spent all that time on IR, and he missed so much time, and he only two preseason games I think he appeared in, but this is a guy that I think even the preseason or 2 before we talked about, got a little bit of guard work too, so there's a little bit of position flexibility in there, but I think you hit a best on it on the top. This is a guy that in no way, shape, or form, even though it looked like a year ago is a lock to be on the 53-man roster and was the season before, or ended up being on the 53-man roster the season before. In no way, shape, form is he guaranteed a roster spot this time. And even if the team keeps, how many are they going to keep? 9? 8
Total
or 9?
offensive linemen, 9.
9. I mean, you get past the easy 5, and then you throw in Calvin Anderson, and you throw in what looks like Spencer Anderson. You're already up to 7. At that point, you're going to need a backup center, probably Ryan McCollum, right? So there's 8. He's going to have to, can he be the 9th, or is it going to be more like a guard? Which Cook, I guess, could play guard in the pitch, but it feels like, at least this far out, as I always say this time of year, it has a funny way working himself out due to injuries or whatever else and all. It feels like he's battling for one spot potentially on that 9-man offensive line unit right now.
And not just battling teammates, but any outside options Pittsburgh could bring in through a waiver claim, through a potential trade, through something else that comes up. And so there's always that possibility as well. So I would love Dylan Cook to become that gem of a tackle that comes out of nowhere and becomes that diamond in the rough. And that's where I thought he could have been 2 years ago. Still could, but those odds were dampened by last year. Let me ask you just really quickly, side topic, Dave. Who has a better chance to make the 53-man roster, Spencer Anderson or Ryan McCollum? Since you mentioned those 2 guys, the 7 and 8.
I mean, look, you got to have a guy that's been in there snapping before. And Ryan, I've talked about Ryan McCollum a lot over the last couple of years and all. Not sexy by any stretch of the imagination. And I know he kind of held his own overall in those games at Frazier. I mean, he's just the best option and really the only option that you have right now, to be quite honest with you. And unless we get to training camp, I start hearing you talk about Spencer Anderson taking a lot of snaps, or even Mason McCormick, who had a cup of coffee at center in college, so to speak there. Unless we start hearing buzz about either of those 2 guys, I mean, Ryan McCollum's it right now.
I agree. I think McCollum has the better chance. And Anderson's a guy that's still inside looking out the bubble right now, but he could get squeezed. Has to be a good year for Spencer Anderson.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go to the next name on your list, Dave. Dominique Davis, big nose tackle, got a cup of coffee with the Bengals. He's kind of bounced back and forth between Cincinnati and Pittsburgh over his career. Appeared in 2 games back in 2022 with Cincinnati, recorded 3 tackles. Is there a role as a backup nose tackle for Dominique Davis, Dave?
Well, I'll tell you what, of these first three players in this set of 90 and 30, this was the least exciting, but the easiest to write about. uh, because of that, I think. This is a guy that, they signed that you stated bounced off of both the Bengals and the Steelers practice squad recently. Probably best fits as a nose tackle moving forward. Path to the 53-man roster is an extremely tough one based on the team's current depth chart and the fact that you went out there and spent 2 draft picks on 2 young defensive linemen, and you went out there and signed a Quale, and you got guys like Loudermilk and the Leals, and it's an extremely tough path for him. I view him as a guy that he's got to stay healthy for all the summer. The least little hamstring injury or something that sidelines him for 3 days could cost him his roster spot. And even if he stays healthy throughout the rest of the summer, able to participate in however many snaps that they want him to play during the preseason, it's still going to be tough to carve out a spot on the roster for him. I think the best case scenario for him is he stays healthy, stays on the roster, does enough during the preseason that the Steelers say, look, we want you back on the practice squad.
Agreed, and he better hope his hamstring's healthy, better hope his teammates' hamstrings are healthy too, that no one else gets hurt and he gets squeezed somewhere because a receiver went down. They got to add somebody in mid-camp, and somebody has to get, the short end of the straw because of it. So
there's a lot of bodies in that room, aren't there?
yeah, right. That's what I'm getting at. So, I mean, he'll probably be third team nose tackle. Where does YA Black play? Is he going to play more defensive end than nose tackle? If so, then maybe Davis is playing some elevated nose tackle reps, because it is unclear who that backup nose tackle is right now. Benton's your starter. Adams is gone. Black would make a lot of sense, but there's still an appetite to have him get work at defensive end. So who is that backup nose tackle? Logan Lee was getting reps there last year when Fehoko went down. That was a bad idea, in my opinion. He should be more defensive end. There is not a clear number 2 right now behind Benton.
Yeah, and you kind of wonder how many snaps, even if that room stays healthy, how many snaps is a guy like Dominique going to get even during the preseason?
Right. It's going to be a tough squeeze for Dominique Davis, but he's got some NFL experience, and maybe that'll serve him well. I think I said short end of the straw. I think I should have said the short straw, so I'm screwing up my phrasing here, but you get the point.
Mixed metaphors.
Yeah. Let's go to Brandon Echols now. We discussed him a little bit recent show as well. I want to see where he's aligning. The buzz or the reporting was in the spring he was really working primarily, if not exclusively, on the outside. Could he get slot work? I think he is better as an outside guy. His tackling in the slot is not going to be ideal there, but he has played inside before. Could he give Beanie Bishop a push? But if not, there's some, I think, good depth from Brandon Echols.
Yeah, who do you have pushing Beanie overall?
That's a concern. I might write about it. It's an annual thing. I feel like a copy and paste year to year. The Pittsburgh still has a slot problem. I've said before, maybe it's better this year than past years because Beanie Bishop is at least in his second year. Maybe an Echols gets a look, and there's some other investments there with the Dante Kent, but it's going to be a big question. I'm very curious to see who else gets slot reps this year.
All right, and Echols has played some in the slot before so far during his career, but last year most of his snaps came on the outside. So at least you got a position flexible guy. Look, this guy's going to be on the 53-man roster. You don't go out and sign a guy 2 years, $6 million contract, give him almost $2 million in signing bonus guaranteed money to wind up cutting him. So I mean, as close as a guaranteed roster spot as you probably get when it comes to a guy like this. Now, he does have a lot of special teams experience so far during his NFL career, and that will play in his favor regardless of where he ends up on this depth chart. He's probably going to be a guy that's going to get a helmet every week and play on special teams. You like that position flexibility. The biggest question, I think, as you kind of alluded to there, is how is he used during the preseason? Is he the next guy up behind Beanie Bishop? Will they go out there? A little bit of buzz as of this week. Mike Hilton remains unsigned. If they could get Mike Hilton to come in on a veteran benefit contract or slightly more, would they go that direction and kind of rely on that? Echols, not a guy that His play in the NFL to date has been more notable outside than it has been inside, but at least he does have that position flexibility. And really, when you look at the depth chart overall right now, I mean, yeah, a lot of buzz, or a little bit of buzz about Kit and can he play in there? But really, we talked a little bit about Castro and will he get it? I mean, Eccles is, at least where we sit right now, perceivably the guy on the roster that would push Beanie, you would think.
You would think at least get some reps in there. Yeah, the question is, you signed this guy. What was the contract he signed? 2 years
Two
for how
years,
much money?
$6 million.
It's not nothing. Is there a role if Beanie is your starting slot corner? Is there any defensive snaps for Brandon Eccles, or is this purely insurance? Somebody has to get hurt for him to see action.
Oh,
Are you paying him all this money to sit on the bench? He played over 400 snaps last year. He made a couple plays for New York. Is he truly just depth?
it feels like it. It feels like a guy that you can at least know has played both inside and outside. And you got a lot of questions about Corey Trice still. Uh, who's on that? Who is your next guy up on the outside right now?
Right. I think it'll be Trice, but the health is certainly a concern. And so if Eccles is all, if all Eccles is just depth, I'm okay with that. It's really good depth overall. I think that's why the cornerback room in many ways has gotten better this year. But I do wonder if you give this guy a contract and, why did he come to Pittsburgh? Was it just to just be a bench warmer? I don't know. I think he was maybe coming to hopefully have some sort of defensive role. Could he push Trice for dime snaps? Is there some other way to creatively get him on the field? We'll see. So I'm just very curious to see how Brandon Eccles gets used and if there is any sort of defensive package for him this season.
Well, I think as the position flexibility that he's shown so far, along with what they paid him, lets you kind of know that they do have a few questions about guys like Trice and the rest of the depth chart. So that's why and probably it was more money he was going to get elsewhere, quite honestly.
Sure, and Eccles played a fair amount on special teams the last 3 years in New York, so he'll certainly have a role there. Could he be a gunner? Could he push Pierre? We'll see.
And he a guy that's let's see, he logged 185 additional snaps. I think prior to this year, and then not counting his rookie season, he's averaged right around 200 special team snaps, I think.
Right, yeah, 222, I'm looking at the numbers, 222 in 2023, 224 in 2022, and 185 last season, so should have a role, no question.
And look, we talked about him right after Deshaun Elliott signed. It's a long shot to speak, but what if this guy takes the bull by the horns as a slot cornerback, beats out Beanie Bishop, or Beanie gets injured, or what have you? He goes on to play, has it just can't be an average season. It had to be an above average season. Somebody were talking about, hey, he was a notable player, at least on defense, much in the same way as Deshaun Elliott. Is this a guy that could get to next offseason? The Steelers can't live without him,
Right. Or even if not, Darius Slay, a 1-year deal. Now he's back in 2026. Eccles will be around. So does he get a look and at least a nod at a starting outside corner position next year? Possible.
So I guess the biggest question is what are the plans for Eccles? He's going to be on the roster. Just what are the plans?
Right. And from I know Josh wrote the report on him, and so he's got a better deep dive onto Eccles' skill set than I probably do, but good athlete, good leaper, undersized, inconsistent tackler with some ball skills. That's kind of the skinny on Brandon Eccles as a player.
All right.
Go to Daniel Aquale, one of my favorite free agent pickups this offseason. Dave, could he be the Deshaun Elliott, that hidden gem that overplays his contract? It's a 1-year deal, won't be the extension guy, but could he get re-signed after 2025? That's a guy that I think can be good rotational depth and stuff to run.
I wouldn't necessarily say I was hoping this team would call a parade. This was very under the radar. I didn't see this one coming. Wasn't really even on my short list. I think looking back at it though, of what was out there at the time, and knowing parting ways with Ogunjobi and the uncertainty you still even though you probably had your eyes on a couple of guys in the draft, you still had to fill that room just in case you didn't get guys that you like or wanted within that. Played obviously a lot of snaps last year with the Patriots. A guy that position flexible to some degree, although probably fits best as a defensive end. I think overall in the Steelers system here, guy's up there a little bit in age, a guy that's got a lot to prove. Better against a run than he is a pass rusher. You get what you get if you have to have this guy out there rushing the passer in key pass rushing situations. Your hope is that the kind of the above the line or right at the line play that he gave against the run last season, you get that guy, probably more of an early down guy, a guy to help kind of rotate some bodies out on that defensive line, especially as a guy like Derek Harmon gets his feet underneath him early on. However, I think as you move on into the season, you're probably going to hope to see less and less of a Quale, more out of a guy like Harmon, maybe even we'll see how Wyatt Black fits into this as a potential backup nose tackle here. Ogunjobi, his time was up. Is this a 1-for-1 replacement? I mean, Ogunjobi missed a lot of tackles. Wasn't dominant in obviously as a pass rusher and all like that. It feels like maybe at least an even or a slight upgrade over Ogunjobi overall. I don't have a lot of high expectations out of Quale. I hope I set the bar low enough where it's easy for him to overachieve within that. But I do think this is a guy that's going to be on the 53-man roster. But I'm hoping we're relying on him to play more than, let's say, 300 or so snaps.
Sure. I mean, I just think he's a high floor, lower ceiling type of a guy that's going to be able to come in your rookie package to rotate in behind Harmon and give Hayward a blow every now and then and just play good, solid run defense. He's a different skill set to me than Ogunjobi. Ogunjobi was more of a one-gapper, quick first step, penetrator, and Quale's more take on blocks and two-gap and stack and shed. And so that's where it's harder for me to kind of make that comparison between Ogunjobi and Quale because I think they're different kind of guys. They won in different ways, but you need depth. Harmon can't play every single snap as a rookie. You can't put everything on this guy, obviously, and so you need guys who can rotate in. God forbid there's an injury. You need somebody who can play steady run defense. I think Quale can do that.
Yeah, and look, he played a lot of games last season, so he's got a lot. Had a reasonable season last year.
And could he be a backup nose tackle and get some snaps? Carl Dunbar talked about his versatility to play up and down the line. I don't know if Quale's played a ton of nose tackle. He has moved around that Patriots front some, but maybe there's a role for him there too.
Most of his NFL snaps have come in the B gap.
Yeah, so we'll see. We'll see how he gets used. Another guy to watch for in terms of the usage, but I do like the pickup of Daniel Quale, who
He played 722 defensive snaps in 2024. Let's hope he doesn't have to play 722 defensive snaps for the Steelers in 2025.
Amen to that. Last name on the list is the man with the new contract, Deshaun Elliott, signed to that extension. The team just announced yesterday the really gem of a free agent pickup prior to 2024. Classic box safety, run, hit, tone setter, great tackler, a little bit of ball skills, but not great in coverage overall. So same role for Deshaun Elliott in 2025, and he should do that job very well.
Yeah, being as how we've talked about him quite a bit most recently because of the new contract and all like that. We've really covered him top to bottom already. Fantastic first season in Pittsburgh. It's no wonder that they went out there this offseason and tried to lock him up for a couple of more seasons. Very physical, heady player. Better closer to the line, obviously, than further away, but it does give you a little bit of rotational value in that secondary. I think, already having played 1 year under his belt in that defense, should understand it even more moving forward here. I expect a lot more, I expect a lot of the same thing for him. Those tackles for losses, those picking up on some keys and shoot some gaps in some key moments of the game, couple of interceptions, couple of forced fumbles. I think he's still got a little bit more upside to him where he can. I mean, look, he could very well wind up with more than 100 tackles in 2025 again, while being a good run force. He could do a little bit better job in coverage in his second season. It would be nice to see him, maybe getting away of a couple more interceptions overall, tip balls, whatever it is. But in summation, I think it's reasonable to expect Elliott to have a 2025 season similar to 2024 and potentially an even better one now that he's been in the system for a year.
Is there anything about his game you want to see more from, more out of in any particular category?
Yeah, just stay on the field all 17 games. That's it. I mean,
Okay.
because he missed a couple of games. What was it, hamstring or groin or something like that last season? I think uh, long and short of it, I think the only thing that you lack seeing out of Deshaun Elliott last season, uh, going into expectations, is we wanted to see two more games out of Deshaun Elliott.
Fair, fair. He's actually only played a full season once in his NFL career. That was back in 2020 under the old 16-game format, and has missed, here and there the last 3 seasons, 14 games in 2022, 15 games in 2023, and 15 games in 2024. So fair point.
Yeah, I mean, good tackler. I think the next gen stats on that dating since 2018, for a minimum of 100 attempts, had a 97.3 efficiency mark, and for a team that's got to tackle well on defense, for sure, like most NFL teams, he's a guy that you want out there, and very very kind of under. It was a little bit under the radar signing with him last year, right? To some
Oh yeah.
degree.
Oh, 100%, 100%.
And he obviously overachieved when it comes to that. And we talked about it's rare for this team, to be in a position where they sign these 2-year guys in free agency, and 1 year afterward they go out of their way early in the offseason to extend their contract. So I think that says a lot about his play and what this team thinks about him moving forward. And I mean, I expect more of the same, just 2 more games of it, really.
I'll give you one other goal to shoot for. Deshaun Elliott has 4 career interceptions, 1 in each the last 4 seasons. Can we get his first multi-year interception season, or multi-interception season, I should say? Get to 2 in 1 year. Let's shoot for that one. If I'm Deshaun Elliott,
Yeah, and that's why I listed in here. Would like to see that. Make a mark in the interception column a little bit more for however it comes about, balls up in the air, whatever. Yeah, and I think you could see that too. 2 or 3 interceptions this year.
and that pick last year was in week 1, right? The Atlanta game, yeah, it was in that Falcons opener, and then didn't have one the rest of the way. So not going to be his main thing. Obviously, you want the interceptions to come from Minka, who only had 1 last year, but if we can get 2 for Elliott, I'm a happy Alex.
He is a good piece to have in that defense with those
No,
players.
100%. Totally agree. All right, Dave, any other final thoughts here that will conclude this edition of 90 and 30? We'll pick it up for the Friday show with the next group of Steelers. Anything else going on? Any other late breaking news?
I'm not seeing anything out here. I know they announced a Deshaun Elliott signing or extension yesterday. The team made it official, so hopefully at any time we'll get the details on that contract.
All right, let's get to some read emails and close out today's show. Just a reminder, go check out the first episode of Steelers Depot Jeopardy. That is on the site on my YouTube channel right now. And episode 2 will record Friday. Like Dave said, it'll probably come out early next week. So be on the lookout for episode 2.
All right, Caleb Zavorsky back in here. Greetings from the surface of the sun in Florida. With Aaron Rodgers' comment about this being his last year, do you think the Steelers were aware of that before he signed the deal? Also, why do you guys think the Steelers are so caught up in bridge quarterbacks? Wouldn't it be easier to swing and miss and hit, swing and miss or swing and hit on the draft process? We talked a lot about what Aaron Rodgers said about this being the final year earlier in the show. Don't want to get caught up in that. I don't think the Steelers were floored by that. I imagine some of those conversations were already had about the Steelers being caught up in the bridge quarterbacks. It kind of is a position that they put themselves in. I mean, they did swing at Kenny Pickett a couple years ago, and unfortunately they missed, and they've been trying to catch up based on that. You still got to, this isn't an organization, at least to me, that's going to draft a quarterback and throw him out there week 1. So, they obviously went out and re-signed Mason Rudolph this offseason, and then, after not being able to, if Justin Fields would have agreed to a deal, that probably would have been their guy. And we heard all this stuff about, Stafford, and was Aaron Rodgers the third choice and all like that. But I mean, because they swung and they miss on Kenny Pickett. That's why they've been having to play the bridge quarterback position, in addition to being later on in the first round and the quarterback classes not being great. And look, at least they did draft a quarterback this year, Will Howard, and we'll see what becomes of that and all. But that's they're kind of where they are because of that's where they are. I hate to use that analogy, but I mean they did take a swing and a miss at Kenny Pickett.
Right, right. And there's a consequence to that, and it sets you back. Maybe not as much as it used to when the olden days you hold on to a quarterback for 4 or 5 years. Teams are more willing to willing to admit their mistake and move on sooner. Granted, Pickett asked for a trade, but Pittsburgh was already in the process of moving on when they were signing Russell Wilson. Yeah, I mean, I get the point overall. The bridge quarterback thing is not conducive to success. Having 5 different week 1 quarterbacks in 5 straight seasons and very likely a 6-6 come next year is not going to produce long-term success to get you where you want to go. But, this year's quarterback class was not the answer to take that swing. And I think there's a case to be made that last year was the year to do it. It was a really good quarterback class. It probably would have been tough to get up in there, but I think Pittsburgh, could have done that. But I understand also them taking the chance on just looking at Russ and Fields for a year and hoping they could find some long-ish term option between one of those two guys. It didn't happen overall, but I guess I can't fault them too much for not taking a first-round quarterback or not trying to move up in the first round in the 2024 NFL draft.
Well, they're paying for their sins for Kenny Pickett.
Right, right. But at some point, you're going to take that swing. And,
right.
Most think it's going to come in 2026. I think they're going to be turning over every stone possible to look for a quarterback, and they should be aggressive if there's somebody they like. So let's see what happens in 26 and go from there.
All right, and let's assume things go the way many perceive it will, and they draft a first-round quarterback in 2026. Is that guy going to be the week 1 starter?
It's a big question far away, but as of right now, I will say yes, because who else is going to start week 1?
I mean, I will say no, but and I guess that would be my next question. Who's that guy going to be? If it is,
are you saying Mason? Because are they going to go sign a veteran?
I'm not saying who it's going to be, but at least you got him under contract for another year there. But I'll believe it when I see it, when they draft a quarterback and they roll him out there week 1.
All right, fair enough. But if they do trade up for one, let's say they go into the top 10, whatever it is, to go get a quarterback, that guy's not sitting for long. If he's not the week 1 starter, he's starting, Mason or whoever's just keeping the seat warm, a la Mitch Trubisky in 22.
Right. And it took week 4 for Kenny to hit the field? I'm just saying that I don't expect him to be week 1, but I don't know. We got plenty of time to talk about that. Garrett Humbertson, fast forward to the bye week. Through the first 4 weeks, the Steelers defense is still suffering from communication issues, and Patrick Queen is not playing up to his potential. Should the green dot be ceded to Peyton Wilson? If not the bye week, then when? He says Queen thrived in Baltimore without the green dot, so I wonder if sometimes you just need to get guys in the right seat on the bus. I mean, I understand trying to, already dead part of the offseason and wondering about guys like Patrick Queen and all like that. But if we're talking about communication issues and Patrick Queen's not playing up to his potential, even the bye week might still be too early to pull the plug on all that.
And often changes don't just come during the bye week. They usually will come before, after. It's not always. I understand the point. That's kind of the cleanest time to make those changes, but it doesn't often work out that neatly. I mean, the question is, okay, if Queen is struggling, how is Peyton Wilson doing? How is his communication? How is his progression? If he's progressing, then yeah, maybe there's a conversation there. If he's not where he needs to be, then Queen's going to have to stay with it. If you take the green dot away from Queen, he's not, I assume, your 3-down guy. That becomes a Peyton Wilson thing where he's your 3-down guy, which he has the skill set to do so, but you just need to map it all out. So yeah, I get the point, and that's the big question on Patrick Queen. That was the issue in Baltimore, and then whenever he gave the green dot to Roquan Smith, Queen played a whole lot better. That was the question last year. Can he walk and chew gum? Can he communicate and be that hub of communication and still play to the best of his ability? Didn't show it last year. So yeah, it's a big thing he has to prove in year 2. Hopefully another year in the system, being more comfortable, will allow him to play faster and help communication, but we'll see.
Look, if Patrick Queen does not have an above-the-line season, he's not going to see 2026 in Pittsburgh.
You don't think?
I had
Even
10
if
point.
what if a season is basically what it was last year?
I mean, is that good enough? Especially the communication, like he says if there's issues, him being the hub and all like that, he's not able to. You need to cede that to somebody else and especially not have him out there in sub package situations.
Well, yeah, if it goes that far, then yeah, I think there's a conversation about his status in 26. But let's assume he's just a green dot guy, wire to wire. The season it goes about in terms of his play is about the same. Let's say communication is just okay, like it's just an okay season, which is
Well,
what I think Patrick Queen had last year.
Well, then you probably do take at least try to see it through one more season, at least a partial season. But all eyes will more than definitely be on him right out of the chute in 2026. And I would imagine that you're going into the draft looking for another inside linebacker on top of it.
Okay, fair enough. And it obviously depends on development of Carson Bruner and those guys too when you're looking at 2026. But point taken.
I mean, Queen needs to have a better season, right? A better second season.
And he's admitted that openly, and I appreciate him being candid. He must be better in 2026 or 2025, I should say.
All right, we're closing in on an hour and a half mark. Let's take one more from Bill Ewan here. Super Bowl contenders. Love the show. Would love for you guys to talk about what it takes to be considered a Super Bowl contender in your mind. So much talk is about needing an elite quarterback to be one, but I think we may be putting too much on the quarterback. I think the roster/coaching means more. You have to have good quarterback play, but somehow the Bengals find their way into the contenders when they only have a quarterback. Find their way into contenders when they only have a quarterback and wide receivers. Defense is far worse than last year, and their O-line still sucks, in my opinion. Steelers have it over the Bengals in every spot except quarterback and wide receiver. He says, I'm not saying the Steelers should be considered Super Bowl contenders, but I don't see how the Bengals are. Hurts gets pushed into that elite quarterback status, but I think that is more because they won the Super Bowl and it needs to fit the narrative. Look, Hurts obviously did enough. You have confidence when you roll him out there. I take issue with him saying that the Bengals somehow find a way into contenders when they only have a quarterback and wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big reason why they are viewed as higher contenders. And I don't know if they're exactly in that Super Bowl contender group like Kansas City and Buffalo and Baltimore. I don't think the national pundits put them in that camp. Do they put them above Pittsburgh? Probably. But yeah, when you have Joe Burrow, I mean, of course, there's a higher upside and a chance to compete in terms of what it takes to get to a Super Bowl. It's more than quarterback, but it starts at quarterback. And the Bengals have one of the best in football, and that's why they get that credit that Pittsburgh doesn't.
Look, did the Eagles have a great roster last year? Absolutely. Right?
The best roster in football.
All right. And when you roll back to the quarterback position and all, I mean, say what you will. Jalen Hurts still managed to put up 6.93 adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat number. Now, that's not off the charts by any stretch of imagination, but I do think that any quarterback for any team that's going to compete's got to be closer to that 7 number than further away from it. And yeah, I realize what Patrick Mahomes put up and all like that, but Patrick Mahomes, as I've stated, kind of the outlier when it comes to Patrick Mahomes is that guys, they get it done on third down, man. So if the Steelers aren't going to, if Aaron Rodgers comes in at a 5.9 or a 6.1 adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat number, the Steelers running game better be damn good, and Aaron Rodgers better be converting them third down. So the Bengals are Super Bowl contenders, are viewed as Super Bowl contenders because of that offense. Plain and simple.
Right. And they're not in that top tier, like I said. No one's putting them, I don't think, in the Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City bucket. They're in at least a tier below. So what are some of the, besides just having a really good roster, what are some of the pillars that make up any Super Bowl team? Like, what are the ingredients in a team that can become a Super Bowl contender, Dave?
I mean, I think you got to have a top 10 defense and against the run and against the pass, obviously. You got to, you got to be able to stop the run and the pass to some degree. I mean, you're also not going to win a Super Bowl if you're allowing an opposing quarterbacks to have a 7 point whatever adjusted net yards per passing attempt stat against you every week, or on average. So, I mean, you have to have some form of a defense, and that circles back to what I guess he's saying is the Bengals defense is suspect, but a suspect defense will not win them the Super Bowl, but could they be contenders for a Super Bowl? I think the answer is yes when it comes to the Bengals. And in fact, their downfall this year might end up being when they get into the playoffs in crunch time against better quarterbacks, their defense falling apart. So, I mean, I guess it's a catch-22, so to speak. They got to be able to run the football to some degree. I didn't think the Bengals were great at that last year. When it comes to this, if you want to talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and them having my confidence to come out and say they're being a Super Bowl contender, it starts first and foremost to me at the quarterback position. And then we got to see the defense be better, especially against the run. And we've got to see this offense be able to start faster overall. And they got to be able to look. We talked about the offense. There's so many layers to this thing when it comes to the 2025 Pittsburgh Steelers, right?
Sure. So just to kind of summarize, give me like 4 pillars of a Super Bowl team, just in general, not Pittsburgh, not Cincinnati. Just if you're writing a book on how to build a Super Bowl winner, and there's 4 chapters, and each one is a main, just overall thought and concept. What would those 4 pillars be?
Above average quarterback play.
Okay, that's 1.
A strong running game.
Okay.
A top 10 defense in against the run and against the pass.
Okay, I get that's 3. I don't know if that was 3 or 4.
Yeah, that's 3.
Okay, and 4.
I guess it's an overarching thing. I mean, net takeaways or net
turnover differential.
Yeah, turnover differential.
All right, I like that. I'm trying to think about mine. Mine, I'll say more than above average quarterback play. I'll say franchise quarterback, which doesn't necessarily mean like an elite guy, but it's got to be a franchise guy. So it's got to be somebody that's certainly up there, top 5, top 6, you would think overall. Strong in the trenches. I'll be a little catch-all on this, but strong offensive line, defensive line, which means pass rush, which means protecting your quarterback. 3, I'll say offensive vision. There has to be a good theory and good philosophy of how you want your offense to game plan and win. That's why the Chiefs, for example, are able to punch above their weight sometimes because of the Andy Reid vision and the answers to the tests that he and Mahomes have. And so I'll say those are my first 3. And then 4th, it's a very obvious one, Dave. Health. Good health. The teams that are healthy late in the season, which is a partially luck for sure. There's some into it in terms of how you train and your facilities and all that kind of stuff, rehab, but good health. The teams that are healthy late in the season for the playoff run are the teams that can last the longest.
I guess to go back and kind of, I guess, take a little bit of the side for Bill here is knowing, or at least thinking we know what the Bengals defense is going to look like this year. Should they be considered Super Bowl contenders, and why?
I wouldn't call them Super Bowl contenders. Is their ceiling the chance to make a run? Yes. I called them a couple episodes back. They're a team with a higher ceiling than Pittsburgh, but a lower floor than Pittsburgh, too. There's a lot more, I think, variance that can come with the Bengals than Pittsburgh. But I have no issue with anyone putting the Bengals Super Bowl odds ahead of Pittsburgh because of Joe Burrow, because of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. I think that's a very reasonable stance to have.
Look, Aaron Rodgers is going to have a better season than both Justin Fields and Russell Wilson combined last year, right?
Yes, the question is how good does it need to be to truly get this team in contender status?
And how much will that running game play into getting the best out of the version of Aaron Rodgers right now?
A lot, a good chunk. He can't shoulder the entire load. If you're asking your 41-year-old quarterback to do that, it's game over.
And this is not likely to be an offense that goes out and puts up 33 points every week, right? So you're going to have a defense that helps keeps the score down, right?
Right, which Pittsburgh, I think, has. I mean, I still have confidence in this defense. Things to work on for sure, but I think they certainly can bounce back from last year's slump at the end of the season. To me, it all comes back to the offense, which has been the question for many years in a row now.
And they're going to have to take the football away enough times to put the offense in favorable positions.
Right, but
so that's kind of where I came up with my 4.
Yeah, fair. I hear what you're saying.
All right. Okay. We got through the emails that we had to get through, and we're a little bit over time, not surprising. But Alex and I'll be back on Friday who knows what we'll be talking about? I'm sure we'll be talking about 90 and 30 series. We'll see if we have the Deshaun Elliott contract by then. Ben Roethlisberger live show today, right?
Yeah, I think that is, 2 o'clock. He's doing a live show, so we'll see what Ben has to say about Aaron Rodgers and whatever else.
All right. In the meantime, you can follow me on Twitter / X at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex at Alex_Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we talk about, want to donate, SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button. Follow the directions that way. What is the end of the show, Alex? As always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.